We've seen a tragic decline in regional ITV, leaving local BBC television with less and less competition. We've seen local advertising markets decline, and we're in very, very tough economic times. So set against this, we've got many local groups and communities who would love to see local television work. And the idea of a new player to stimulate competition and increase real journalism, I think, is a really exciting one.
A few weeks ago, I announced that we will, in the next couple of years, license 65 local TV stations, starting with 20 next year. This is the third local TV summit that I've been to. We had a huge audience in Birmingham. In Manchester, it was standing room only, and here, again, standing room only. And I think that is an indication that whatever the folks in London are saying, there is huge local interest. And I'm what is called in political circles a localist. I believe that the best way to transform society is by harnessing the energy and the enthusiasm and the ideas of local people to transform the environment that they live in, and local media has an incredibly important role to play in that. The biggest challenge really has been to have a proposition that makes local TV commercially viable, and I think we've cracked that, but time will tell, of course. But I've been a big champion of this for many years, and I guess by 2015 you'll be able to see whether we've got our sums right, but we think that the proposal we've had does deal with the biggest single challenge, which is to make local TV commercially viable. So what we're trying to do is to make it so that the only costs that local TV services have to deal with are the costs of producing local content and selling advertising to local advertisers. And we've had independent analysis done by Ender's analysis of the model that we're proposing, and they suggest that the costs of this model are around £500,000 per annum for a local TV service. I think it could be less than that, particularly in smaller towns and cities. But if you stick with that £500,000 figure, there are lots of different potential revenue sources. But if you took the most obvious one, which is selling advertising locally, that would mean selling about £10,000 of advertising a week, which brings you within the realm of the kind of amounts of money that many local newspapers are currently able to raise. So I think we have a model there that for the first time makes local TV viable in many places that it wouldn't otherwise have been viable. It would be great for local businesses to have a platform to advertise their products much more cheaply than was possible before, and I think it will also be brilliant for the local creative industries. It will create jobs and employment locally as well. I do believe it can be totally transformative for communities. I think the best evidence for this is how important local newspapers and local radio stations are to communities, and I think in a multimedia world we should ask ourselves whether we shouldn't have the same for television as well.
I think TV, picking up on what the Minister said, I think TV can define an area, a community. As ITV has reduced its regional production capacity, the BBC has sort of rightly stepped into the gap. And I think licence fee payers outside of London are entitled to see high quality programming that reflects their region.
We've been very much aware, sort of for a number of years, from all of the research that we've done, just how much the public value local media, whether that's been in radio or indeed an appetite for TV, even though TV has been regional. But it's actually localness that people value rather than the sort of wider regionality. So over the past year, we've been working very closely with DCMS to help develop that vision and think about ways that we can give this idea of local TV absolutely its best shot.
And our proposition with Your TV is that we want it to do what it says on the tin. We will create a core proposition, which is a federation of stations, which we will do with local partners. You've talked about how little it might cost in order to run a local operation, but that's you're talking about 1 hour. There needs to be a sustaining service in order to make this cohesive thing work, which is what me and my colleagues are very interested in developing.
I very much doubt whether, having had the BBC's version of local television killed, it will respond well to having a large part of the licence fee taken to fund a commercial venture.
I don't think it is right for the BBC to do this themselves. I was one of the politicians that I don't think it was an unholy alliance. I think there was real concern that if the BBC put its resources into its local video on demand proposed service, which I think in the end the BBC Trust decided would be immensely damaging to local media organisations, and that in turn is very damaging for plurality of provision. Lots of local newspapers thought that they might end up being closed down if the BBC went ahead with that proposal, and I think that would have destroyed jobs and been very bad for the country. So I think BBC Trust recognised that, BBC themselves recognised that, but the BBC has a duty to represent the country to itself, and part of that is our local identity, and I think they have decided the best way to do that is to support local TV behind the scenes. There is no corresponding cut in BBC programming output to pay for this, because the cut in the licence fee, the 16% cut in the licence fee that I negotiated, was explicitly negotiated on the basis that the BBC's core services would be protected. This was an efficiency saving, and 16% over 6 years is a kind of efficiency saving that I think if you talk to anyone in the commercial sector, they would jump at. They would say that is eminently achievable, and I think BBC management believe it's achievable. That's not to say it's not painful, but it was an efficiency saving.
Or will the Minister give the public an assurance that despite the existence of local television, there will be a continuing commitment to ITV's regional obligation?
Regional TV is here to stay. These local TV stations will not have universal coverage. There are parts of the country, significant parts of the country, which under the current plans won't be able to get local TV until we have IPTV. And so I think regional TV will remain part of the furniture.
Right, we've just got time for a few.
Well, regional news will, in terms of a PSB policy objective, will remain there.
On ITV, because it's already on BBC.
Well, yeah, I mean, sorry, I just don't want to prejudge what the IT discussion with a particular commercial company, but as a policy objective, we will continue to want to have non-BBC regional news, if that's what you're having to say.
I think, just to be partisan for a moment, I hope that in this part of the region we really will take this seriously and will give it a go and won't worry about the fact it might not work in places. I think there's all sorts of ways it could work, and I think it'll be a very exciting journey trying to find out what those ways are and making it work.
Good passion, actually.
Yeah. Yeah.